The Shelby GT350. Jesus Christ, this thing. That is in fact an 8,200 RPM redline on a Mustang. And geez, I'm nowhere near the quarter, I'm nowhere near the end of the revs. Wow, what a thing. It is so good. Whoa, it's good. I mean, I can't think of anything to say. Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the Shelby GT350. Easily the best Mustang in the history of the world. Okay. Leon Loco here, doing a car vlog for the first time in a while. And we have a hell of a car for you. As you've probably figured out by now, this is the Shelby GT350. Brand new. It has 160 miles on it. And it is mine to play with for the day. How awesome is that? Pretty damn awesome. Oh, gee. Okay, well, a little bit of info about the 350 and what makes it so special and so different. First, as you probably heard, is the engine right up there. The Voodoo V8, as it's codenamed, is probably the first new engine in the history of the Mustang, the first truly new departure as engines go for the Mustang and maybe even Ford. It is a flat plane, 5.2 liter, 530 horsepower, V8, naturally aspirated, that revs to fucking Mars. 8,200 RPM redline, and I can't even use it all. Even on roads like this, you know, you're doing 120 miles an hour and you're at 6,000 in third. You really need a track to use all of this thing, unless you're in first and second. Oh geez, it's just a thing. I am beside myself. Oh, god damn it. Fuck off. God, the number of spam calls I've been getting. You know, that segues me nicely into something I should talk about. Gone are the days of shitty electronics and a shitty interior in a Mustang. And I should talk about the performance more because it's more relevant, but in many ways, the interior and the electronic goodies like this, the new sync system, are as relevant as the rest of the car, because they're such a departure for Ford. Out of the box, you get, you know, Alcantara everything. You get wonderful Recaro seats that are just outstanding. Everything you touch is nice. Even the plastic is nice. The interior on this car is easily on par with BMW, with Porsche. I would go so far as to say on par with Lamborghini and high-end like RS model Audis. And that is high praise. I mean, I guess Ford just got sick of taking so much shit, you know, for crappy interiors. They finally said, okay, the Shelby's going to be different, and it is. It is completely different. And it is a wonderful place to be. I can't honestly see how anyone could get in this car and say, yeah, I need a nicer interior than this, because it's astoundingly good. The Sync 3 system works amazingly well. The navigation is wonderful. The audio sounds really good. It won't come through in the camera, but I mean, it's just good, and that's just the radio. If you get into Sirius and play stuff off your iPhone, it's even better. You got like an 8-inch touchscreen LCD You know, all the backlighting and all the buttons and knobs is this wonderful, nice blue. You have these kind of Ford GT-esque switches for the really important stuff, like the exhaust and launch control and the turn traction control off. Yeah, I mean, the shifter is great. It's nice and short. Really, the most astounding part about the GT350 is that it's a Mustang that you buy and you don't have to do anything to it. Now, let's roll that back a bit. Used to be, like 10 years ago when I bought my last Mustang, which was a Roush Mustang, you bought a Mustang as a starting point, and then you bolted essentially the same amount of money you just paid for the car onto it to make it good. And that's the Mustang. You know, you had $40,000, $50,000 in your Mustang, but it was as good as a Corvette. It was as good as an M3, just much cheaper and in most cases much faster. But there are so many things that just from the factory really sucked. I mean, the audio system sucked. There was no navigation, or if it had it, it sucked. The shifter sucked. The suspension sucked. The brakes sucked. Basically, what you got was a chassis, a pretty good engine, you know, and not much else. Now, with this thing, you get absolutely everything from Ford. The brakes are these ridiculous 15.5-inch rotor Brembo monoblock insanity stoppers. Two-piece rotors, front and rear. The engine is, I can't imagine, yeah, you could get a GT500 if you wanted to go drag racing and you need to have 800 horsepower in your daily driver, but I don't need that in a street car, and I can't imagine you would need more out of this. Even the exhaust, you know, I've never bought a car that I didn't immediately put an exhaust onto because it was so fucking quiet and stupid and boring. And this thing, you hit a button and it's exactly what I would want. Plus, you can shut it up. If you're on the highway, if you're in 6th gear, if you're going slow and you don't want to have drone, you know, making you deaf, you press the button, or you just put it in 6th gear and it's quiet. It's wonderful. And the second you get on, you know, drop a gear and disappear, it's loud as fuck, frankly. I mean, it's really as loud as you would possibly want, unless you're completely insane or like 12. But for me, it's perfect. It is completely freaking perfect. And the suspension, you know, magnetic ride control, you know, magnetic fluid in the shocks. You have a million different suspension and modes here. You've got, like, I'm in sport right now. You've got shitty weather, you've got track, and you've got drag strip, which does all kinds of interestingly awesome things to the suspension to make the car just go faster and be easier to use. And the level of technology in this thing, I would say, probably eclipses most modern, you know, sports cars, certainly, and some exotics. And the power, it sounds, I mean, it doesn't sound like a BMW V8, even though it's a cross-plane engine. It doesn't sound European, but it also doesn't sound like thunk, 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 like a cross-plane domestic V8. It's this weird kind of spot in the middle. And boy, it's good. I mean, geez. I've only been driving this thing a short time. I've only got about 50, 60 miles on it. But it's easily the best Mustang I've driven in my life. And quite frankly, it's pretty close to one of the best cars I've driven. And I don't say that lightly. You know, I drive some pretty silly stuff in my professional life, which is, you know, part of what I do is customizing exotic cars for people. And this is as good a car as pretty much any tuner could build. I mean, if you go to Roush, and 10 years ago, if you wanted a fast Mustang, you went to Roush or you went to Celine, and you gave them a bunch of money, and they made you a Mustang with all the cool bits on it. This is better than I think any tuning shop could do. I mean, if someone brought me this car and said, make it better, I'd have to really sit down and think, how exactly am I going to accomplish that? Because it doesn't really need anything. And I'm just astounded. I mean, yeah, this car is not cheap compared to a base Mustang. It's over 60 grand, especially right now, because they're pretty new and you're usually paying over invoice to the dealer. So it's an expensive car. But for what you get, honestly, I like it better than a C7 Corvette. I like it better than just about any, you know, sports car you can name in the price range. And it's faster and better, frankly. Just got a little bit of TC there. I mean, even when you just got your big toe in it, the sound of this thing, the experience of this thing, I have to think if Carroll Shelby were still with us today, this would be his favorite car. And in many ways, it is true to the original GT350, which is make a car light, make a car simple, make it cheap compared to everything else that's in any way comparable, and just go out and flog the damn thing. I mean, I unfortunately I'm not Jeremy Clarkson or even, you know, Chris Harris, and I can't rabbit on about all the adjectives to describe how good this car is. But if I do that, I don't really have to, do I? Because it's so good. I really am almost out of words on this thing. Jeez. And now I'm behind some idiots, so I can talk some more about other parts of it. I'm impressed, I gotta say. I mean, let's go back 20 years, okay, when I was still very young and very opinionated, and I hated Ford. I hated everything they did, because frankly, all of their cars were boring, slow, generally useless crap. That all changed for me in like the 2005-2006 era with the new S197 Mustang platform, which was a really good car. I bought one, I fell in love with it, I beat the piss out of it, you know, with a big Whipple blower on it, you know, making over twice the horsepower it had stock. And I never was able to break it and with no small amount of trying. So that's what really endeared Ford to me. I said, okay, you guys have really got it together. You're building a good car now. This is as much an evolution of that as the Roush was from like a piece of crap Fox body that if you went around a corner over 32 miles an hour, you would instantly die. This car is perfect. It is the best Mustang I've ever driven. It is one of the best cars I've ever driven. And one of the things I like so much, and for God's sake, I wish Ferrari and Lamborghini and everyone else who makes the hyper exotics would pay attention to this. It is full of technology. I have all the suspension settings. I can change my steering ferocity with this button here. I can change my shock ferocity with this button. I can change various traction control modes. I can tell the car pretty much what I want to do, but I can still drive the fucking thing. I can still do that myself without having to have a fucking stupid flappy paddle, which would completely ruin this car. And I've got all this wonderful instrumentation, these great analog gauges. I've got, you know, I can come up on the dash here. I've got my tire pressures. I've got like every possible bit of engine information you want. I've got my air-fuel ratio. I've got my axle oil temp. I've got my cylinder head temperature. I've got air inlet temperature, engine oil, transmission oil, battery voltage. I mean, you fucking name it. It's everything that a mechanic or a tuner or a car geek would possibly want to know about, and maybe go and add, you know, aftermarket gauges or data logging to have, this car comes with. And honestly, just as an exercise, I added up the other night, just before, you know, after the first time I drove this car, what it would cost to just buy a base Mustang GT and put all this crap into it. And it was like over 90 grand. So, and you still wouldn't have this crazy engine. You'd have, you know, the base Mustang engine, which, you know, the Coyote engine is far from bad, but it's nothing like this. Nothing like it. So, you know, you say, okay, it's a $60,000 Mustang, which is kind of ridiculous for a lot of people, but if you're to build this car yourself, it's $90. And you got to pay someone to do it. That's just the parts of cost and components. So really, it's an amazing value. It's an amazing car. And again, it's the best Ford I've ever driven. You know, and I've driven the Ford GT, the previous one, which is a great car. I would say this in the real world is faster and more usable and better finished. Wow. What can I say? But if you're looking for a sports car, if you're looking for a track day warrior that you can use in the real world that's not going to make you sore and fatigued and deaf, I can't imagine what you could buy that is better than this right now. I mean, it's lighter and tauter and nimbler than an M3 or even an M2. It's much faster than both of those cars. You know, if you get into Porsche, I mean, yeah, you could get like a Cayman GT4, which would probably be close to as fast as this car on the track, but nowhere near as fast on the street or the highway. And it's twice as expensive. Yeah, I mean, I guess the Corvette is the only thing you can compare it to, and I've driven the C6, and I've driven the C6 Z06, and I would say the Z06 is probably a little bit faster than this thing on a track, maybe, but in the real world, I mean, you could go a dozen pulls against someone and come up with pretty much exactly the same result. It would all come down to the driver and the conditions. And really, that's high praise. I have to say, Ford, you have made the best car here that I've ever driven from Ford, and frankly, one of the best sports cars I've ever driven, full stop. It's astounding. You know, I have to say, somewhere up there, Carroll Shelby is looking down, you know, and tipping his hat to this thing and saying, thank God they didn't fuck it up. Because I think he would have been very proud to have his name on this automobile. Man, it's good.
Hey, you like this video? Well, go hit the like button, and if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel.